Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. The title is Forgiving the Chaos of an Ordered World. And I find that whole, in this lifetime, when there's chaotic moments and our mind wants it to be a certain order or in a certain way, that's a sort of inner struggle. It has to do with a sort of external sense of how the world is occurring and how the meaning of the world is actually behind your eyes. The mind contains itself in objective phenomena and subjective phenomena. The subjective phenomena is more subtle. It has to do with the orientation and the direction of your attention. The objective phenomena is kind of like the given physical component to life. The poet Rumi says, I have lived on the edge of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. It opens. I have been knocking from the inside. What he means is he's been looking for some truth outside of himself, and then he suddenly realizes that truth is not outside. It is kind of the presence of the moment, of the intelligence of the being. So our moments of intelligence, they get compartmentalized. If you just sit in a park silently and still and just wonder about um, how life came into the way it is now, you will see many factors. You will see just many. The mind of man has divided itself in many ways to have potentials for future continuity. That means we're not just divided physically, like as if we were a phenomena from this earth, this thing that was growing, and then suddenly it grew into a separation with the world. We became a creature. We lifted from the earth, surface of the earth in some sense. Now, due to having a kind of individual, separate physical body in a physical world. First, we were the world unconsciously. Now we became a conscious phenomena, a conscious being in the world, in the sense that, like, a sort of separate existence again. Man separated himself from the world, then separated himself from himself, and then came the ideological existence and the subjective evolution, and he became, in some sense, an I thought. You became a person who the attention of the moment could have a more of a subtler presence. if the difference between us and human beings a long time ago is that their attention, their levels of concentration, and I don't want to say like, how would I say it? Their imaginations were wilder because they simply had the present moment to work with. So their imagination was purely reality. And then as there came a sort of evolution, their imagination moved beyond reality. It was a sort of ambition of the subtler self, the ambition of the subjective self to see beyond itself, and the way it's done that is by multidimensionally projecting itself. So you see, there's a way you can handle your memories like it's a file cabinet. Let me think of my last birthday. Let me think of like 10 years ago. But there's a way where you can watch all the phenomena, all the contents of your mind. You see, the thing about inner techniques, and especially mysticism, is that there's no hands to do the job. There's nothing you can physically do because the question is about the internal structure that's maintaining the physicality. And the internal structure, people like Carl Jung and Freud and many other people, many have contributed to this. They have, in some sense, compartmentalized the mind into a conscious, subconscious, and an unconscious mind. Okay, and what they mean by that is that, of course, I'm, how would I say it? This talk is limited to my view, but on the topic. But like here, let me say it like this: when imagination began being studied, and even when human consciousness reached a point where collectively they could acknowledge the word imagination, they could just have that word in the dictionary. That was, in some sense, something that would come out of nowhere. So on some, not even dreaming, it's just deep sleep, and then you wake up, and as you wake up, the presence and texture and fabric of reality comes into more of a relationship. So it's kind of like, there's some mornings, it's very hilarious. I've had the experience where I've woken up, but I haven't woken up as a thought yet. What that means is I'm just the presence of the moment, and there's like, if somebody asked me in that moment, who are you, it's as if there's no you know what I mean, it's as if the mind has not activated the linguistic kind of simulation. You see, back in the day, it was important if you were just aware of your physical environment and in some sense survived somehow. Nowadays, especially in 2019, we find ourselves in a world where you don't have to just be aware of objective data, you have to be aware of subjective data and the complexities of subjective data. Now the thing is different states of the mind have been in some sense sold into certain programmed structures. So what I mean by that is that there's a conditioning involved. It doesn't matter who you are. You can just give a zero value to every child that's born. Like every child that's born, it's like zero value. You're like zero, like you just got here, you know? But as life comes, there comes evaluations are given. Waves of data hit the person, and in some sense, the natural world is sculpting the person. As much as I want to believe that my free will and it's just me here and I've been doing everything for myself, I can't avoid the whole intelligence of the world that's happening in front of me, right? So there is a relationship there, and that relationship is very crucial because right now we are hardened into fixed ideological entities. We think we have to be in a certain way. If you go ask people, what do you want? They'll tell you a nice story. And what that means is the world is filled with stories. And this is why I even use the word the linguistic simulation and the language threshold, and even attempting to bring people's attention to language. Because our world, our inner realities are made of language. If you don't study language, suddenly the sentence can trap you. And I'm kind of animating. I'm saying it can trap you because it's kind of like one idea being the only idea you have space for in your mind. You see, it has to do with the self acknowledgement of one's own intelligence, but not through the way they have been told to be intelligent, but through finding a mirror. That means there's, like, I consider two types of people listening to these talks that I give. There's some people who hear it and it's like, okay, some interesting new viewpoints, you're listening. And then there's some people who will realize I am shouting indirectly, shouting at the audience, that find a clear mirror as soon as you can and then live your life. You see? Anyways, let's talk about more about the complexities of our current era. You see, I say in other talks of mine that we are in an era of idea worship. People worship ideas. You tell them an idea, it changes their world. The person can get emotions involved through anger. Your emotions get involved when your sense of self is being changed by the world. That's when you get emotional, you know? You see, any place you stay long enough, you will learn to accept. But in some sense, your emotions are the combat. They are the combat, as if there's certain projections in your mind, and these projections, believe it or not, are in a sort of combat for their mortality, a sort of mortal combat, right? So the thought of you and the thought of everything else that your mind has in some sense generated, it's as if how can I tell you? Sometimes a person having an enemy in the world, it's not actually they have an enemy. Their mind is their enemy because their mind is getting the impression and generating the impression of the other's value. So you see, this is why I say language is crucial to study before any sort of serious metaphysics, because your world is opened up by language. You were spoon-fed language as a kid, you know? And so I think it's kind of like it's a great achievement of our species. At the same time, it's not the best we can do. And so it is, in some sense, we went from being in the food chain, in the animal food chain before civilization and society, and we were just fighting as a creature. We were in the territory of wilderness. And so we stepped out of this wilderness through what is considered a sort of unique leap of intelligence in our species. And we came into structures. We began to realize the concept that you can create something and, in some sense, have it remain the next day. So, believe it or not, everything was chaotic at first. And then it became ordered more and more. As it became ordered, it's as if man was like, okay, why am I fighting like tigers in the wilderness? Why don't I go, inside a house so I don't have anything to worry about? And then the governments established, and suddenly the city was safe from wildlife. So in regards to the animal food chain issue, we solved that as a species. Nice job. But at the same time, we have other dangers. Now the dangers come as more subjective. So in 2019, I believe there's more subjective dangers than objective dangers. And people are going to be like, what do you mean subjective? I mean that an idea, a belief, can consume your lifetime. And this ang like, you don't understand. I have walked in kind of villages in eastern countries where I have seen behavior of people, and I have seen their lifestyles, and I have seen how it's as if they are an evolved being, but they are not allowed to use their evolutionary ability because of their belief. You see, it's as if language has won. We are all slaves to words that kind of influence us because we're such conditionally based beings. We have not discovered the unconditional truth of our being, of our state of mind. A mind that watches all stories, yet is no character or a world. And if you see, people are just, whether secular or not, everybody's seeking something better, Sometimes we sell ourselves on stories. This is why some have been known to say the ego is a great salesman. and And the ego has incredible negotiating ability. You know, this is why I have kind of, this inspired me to kind of say this quote that wisdom is the last refuge of the tyrant. This is why not just chaos comes to the wise man, but order as well. What they come to the wise man for, the wise man is by nature standing somewhere different, like a different scope of mind. This can be demonstrated in a very nice story, a Zen story, where there's these two sorts of imperial guards. Every day they've been standing outside this palace in this like Zen story, you know. And they've been standing there bored, but yet they have pride and are proud of their kingdom, and so they guard their kingdom. So this guard, there's two guards at this gate, and one of the guards looks at the other one, like, yo man, you see that flag up there on that pole? And the other guy's like, yeah, I see it. And he says, that flag, it's not the flag that's moving, man, it's the wind that's moving the flag. The other person looks at it and he says, but I see the flag is moving. No, the flag is moving. So in some sense they have this debate of, is the wind moving or is the flag moving? To their surprise, they see a wise man walking literally on the other side of the street of the kingdom. Both of them just quickly release their posts and go up there and ask. And they say, kind sir, can you tell us? As if they just acknowledge the guy's like some wise man who's come out of the mountains, like on a rare occasion. And so, and so this wise man comes. And once he's asked which one's moving by the guards, he says, it's not the flag that's moving, even though it appears the wind is moving. And it's not the wind that's moving the flag, which means the flag is moving. He looks at both of the guards and says, it is your mind that is moving. And it's like, da-da-da-da. like an intense kind of revelation occurs. Those two guards realize, oh my God, before the flag or the wind moves, their consciousness is moving. And so that's when you come to the present. When you come to the present, it's a remarkable moment, for it's the moment before any moment has value. That's enlightenment for you guys. Find the moment that before any moment had value. That's there. That moment is there. It's kind of like the edge of your memories. If your memories are like an ocean you're kind of swimming in, once you get to the edge, you laugh because you see the bottom of the pool and you swim back up. You begin to see a sort of kind of reversion from the escapist into heaven approach. So many people in metaphysics, they have that, right? They don't even study their morality. I think most people's morality is just based on, it's like code, guys. Honestly, I'm not joking. This world is built on code. But what's strange is we originated the code and now are getting entrapped by it. The words we created, we are now becoming the creation of. Do you see? The word influences the mind of the person. I don't know if I mentioned this, but Ludwig Wittgenstein says the limits of my language are the limits of my world. And there's another parallel to this guy. There's a Persian Sufi poet named Hafez, and he says the words you speak become the house you live in. As if both these scholars in some sense could acknowledge reality and recognize that there is an origination that cannot be defined by its effect. So here's the issue. The issue with the placebo effect is not that you, because the observer's attention is on the object of observance, the object of observance changes. It's because the action of doing something in a world where there could potentially be a collective field of intelligence means there's no value. As if a drop is trying to figure out if it's a drop in an ocean. Do you know what I mean? So that's how the core depths of the mind will appear. They will either be, it's like it can never succumb. Do you see what I mean? That means it's like some people in the Buddhist way of looking at life, they see the movement of manifestation, Maya, and they see karma. And they ascribe this karma to a sort of agency beyond emptiness, or that is empty in some sense to the mind of man. And so, due to this sort of cyclical wheel of karma situation, there's something being missed by that story. And what is being missed is that it's not the wheel of karma where the wheel is moving and we're stuck in. We are moving the wheel of karma. Your action, your intention, which originates from an inner reality, defines the action of the outer reality. And so, for language's sake, we need the external and internal, but in regards to a very common materialistic approach, it's like matters here. Nothing else matters. And so what that means is Mr. Within kind of came and saw the whole world is at war, like they're fighting over words because they feel only one way of life is true and valid. And because we think one way of life is true and valid, the spotlight goes there and all the other avenues and areas of intelligent movement go out missed, you know? We seek freedom, yet we seek it in a story, and that is why it is not freedom. It is too conditional to remain. The chaotic thing is that the freedom beyond the eyes of men, the true evolutionary freedom, it transcends the language threshold. And what I'm saying is, Mr. Within is saying, our intelligence as beings is evolving beyond the languages that have become the worlds we walk in. We are evolving our own, not evolving, we are moving beyond our own values in some sense. As a species, I'm talking about. So just to say a little bit about the inner struggle, I feel this episode is going to be a short one. This inner struggle, it seeks to find a story as if like a sort of shelter, as if a sort of shelter your personality wants to find a right story to be acknowledged in. Your physical existence wants to, in some sense, continue in the world. Your mind wants to continue in stories. Your body wants to continue existentially. Your mind wants to continue experientially. Yeah, your body wants to continue existentially. Because your mind wants to continue experientially, it chooses to acknowledge itself as separate. You see, a lot of people in the spiritual community, they they deem the material as inferior. When you go look at yoga and a lot of these practices of the mystics that included renunciation or asceticism of some sort, the whole thing was the dude's like, okay, I'm in the wrong place, stop being here, and he would sit and try to liberate himself from the conditions of existence. So what I'm trying to say is they would acknowledge themselves as beyond this world. So in that manner, they wanted to have nothing to do in this world. They wanted to move beyond it. And their consciousness was tunneled into a unique state. I can't, um, I'm a designer within this moment, but I'm not a designer of all moments. And this world is filled with too many surprises, to be honest. But anyways. The attention is struggling because the character in the story feels it is fading, feels it is reaching a vanishing point. And this is why a lot of people, when they hear, like, I wouldn't expect a lot of people to be drawn to these Mr. Within talks, because I am pointing at the real world. But everything in media is pointing at the opposite. Not everything, but you know what I mean, right? So what I'm trying to say is, okay, listen, we can't get too absorbed in the technological distraction of a natural evolution, right? So for me, I'm like, okay, back in the day, we had to, like, our ancestors fought for what was true to them. Now we have to fight to even have there to even be something to be true. The issue is our eyes see the world. They find themselves with a free will that can do some things. Even though we are small, but the system is big. We are a natural part of the system, so that kind of means we're naturally big in some way. We are the miracle of how nature has opened its eyes as man. Now, this nature recontemplates its source, and it begins to see that it is keeping the world in a cause and effect dynamic. This is simply because duality has become the initial frame. The person's core program in their life has been duality. That means their moment appears to them as, like, everything appears as separate. Do you see? And there's no good and bad in these talks after some point, guys, because I'm just trying to paint a landscape, a situation where after 4 billion years, this science project called humanity has come this far. What do we do? What do we as 8 billion people do now? And on some level, there's this kind of hedonistic kind of lifestyle that whispers to you from the distance. A sort of kind of, okay, it's too big, it doesn't make sense, we're just here somehow. This is how God liked spheres, this is why, everything, or whatever, like, Big Bang happened, there was a bang, and everything came. And so what I'm telling you is that our contentment with the limited is our denial of the limitless. So believe it or not, it's not okay to be you. Like, on some level, every person in every family show will say, yes, it's so important to be yourself, but not when there is a species here that's dismantling in front of our eyes due to the inefficiency of the right ideas at the right time. And that's very complex, because every human being that's born, there's a potential they will bring chaos or order to their environments. And so the more people there are, and the more harder the world, the more the intensity of suffering increases. There's a ratio. It's proportional. More suffering, more cruelty and violence. Very easy. So the first task is, okay, creatures are being born on this planet and in some sense going through a ride of a lifetime and eventually passing away. So what's important is we treat the world as a sort of roller coaster ride, where we are looking at how can we make the rides of people easier? How can we make their life more efficient? How can we find what the values? Every person is a hidden contribution to the world, and so really, you cannot. The issue is every argument can be taken, can be devalued to non-existence. An idea is like kind of like those old school balloons people would get on, like going in the air and then suddenly some force kind of pushing it down. Okay, so what that means is any action started from like that moment before the action was there. The moment the action is happening, it can have a resistance. Science kind of liberates the mind in that way. Every action has a reaction. You know, this cause and effect mindset means just move your attention towards not just what feels right, because if you rely on emotional data of your own being, it will be limited. If you rely only on subjective data and just entertain yourself through the intellect, that will also be limited. What is required is a return to an honest world. You would care for the simplicity that has led to such complexities. The cosmos is always singing its songs, but not many people hear it. There is a living reality here. There is a world where life can happen. It is now, like, it's very obvious our technological ability, and especially the technological power of some nations, they can resolve so many issues in many parts of the world, and it is the lack of unity that it denies the opportunity for the great advancement of humanity. And it's so easy to just get obsessed with yourself your whole life or get distracted by the idea of yourself. This is why me personally, like, I'm in a hate and love relationship with language. Do you know? And it's not just with language, it's just kind of like I open my eyes in the morning and I see data nonstop. There's ways you can look at this life where it's simply through a designer view. What that means is there's no story, there's no good and bad, it's just design. It's just form. So it's kind of like looking at what's there, then living. And so the issue is people haven't been, don't have stopped caring for their own existence because they want to fit into some cool story of a collective existence that they're the hero of. Do you know if everybody wanted to be a hero on this planet, it would be chaos? You know? If everybody wanted to be a hero, then it would just be heroes trying to save heroes, you know what I mean? There would be no civilian or citizens to save, if everybody's a hero. But the story of life matters in the sense that it imbues matter with value. And to find the source of language, you have to, believe it or not, this is going to sound strange, but you have to respect your mind. Now, some people are going to be like, what do you mean, respect my mind? Isn't my mind the one doing the respecting? And I'll be like, you have to respect your moment, which is the full presence of your mind. Because the moment you can accept something, you can work with it. It's like before you find the wrench, you can't do anything. You can't engineer something new. You have to find a mirror that reminds you what you're looking for is your choice, not the choice of others. People are looking to in life. That's why the hero felt very cool in like the movies we find, like Avengers or whatever, you know, because the hero saved everybody. He found a moment where he could accept his true self. And most people go on, I'm pretty sure, I am very certain most people bash themselves through uh, unnecessary inner dialogue or thinking. The solution is to take the blindfold off, and that blindfold is fear and desire. These two forces, these two, you can even see them as given personalities. These two modes, waves, like they both hide something. The desire hides the future, hides you who right now who you are by selling you on the future. Your fear also sells you on your future, but it sells you through your incapability. The other one sells it through ability. So desires are things that your mind is your mind's mouth is watering for. But your fears are restrictions. They are restrictions of the personality. There are unknown moments where the unknown moment creates a space where the mind can animate a bad situation, or not a bad situation, just projects a story there. It's like a kind of their relationships with the unknown. Most people, their relationships in life are defined based on knowledge, based on how they know, right? But very few people care about what they don't know, and those are the ones who, in some sense, uh, life blesses in some sense. Because the unknown is not being ignored, it's here. Like, how can you ignore it? Hence the Vedic poetry of the lover of the unknown and the seers of thought. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope this episode was helpful. And feel free to leave a comment. I'm always interested to see how people see the same landscapes. Much blessings and namaste.